Ambassador, Excellency, thank you for joining Diplomatic Connections for this interview.
Thank you very much.
In early December, for the second time in a decade, your country is going to host the annual meeting of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Group. What are the host country's goals for this meeting?
Oh, thank you very much for coming to the embassy and have this interview with the ambassador. APEC is very much important to the region and to every participating members. So for APEC this year, because it is now at a time of changes in the region, so we try and share our goal with the participating members on how to reinvigorate the momentum for regional integration and economic development for the region, beneficial to all participants. And so the theme will focus on how to nurture the dynamic development of the region, focusing also on inclusiveness, regional integration, and benefits and prosperity for all. And we have been working with all participants from the beginning of this year, and it will be culminated in the summit week in November this year. Very much hope that President Donald Trump will be coming to that summit, and we have the confirmation of that. And we think it will be very much important, and this is the time for the new administration and also the new president to announce the strategies and engagement with the region.
Did you say you have confirmation, or you're waiting for confirmation? President will come?
You remember that during the visit, Vice President Mike Pence in Indonesia earlier this year, he announced the decision and intention of the president to go both to Vietnam, to the region, including Vietnam, for the APEC summit. And we have been in touch with the administration, and we are confident that we will be going.
Oh, okay. Now, your president has cited the official goal as creating a new dynamism and fostering a shared future. To the fellow who's selling motorbikes in Ho Chi Minh City, what does that mean?
It will be meaning that we will have more opportunities for small and medium-sized businesses to do in the regional context. So APEC will create an environment that is favorable for networking the SMEs, the businesses, and also, as you will see, they will be also promoting startups. Young people are very much loving of that. And certainly more foreign investment will go to Vietnam and other partners. And so the daily people, they will see the benefits of how trade and interaction, not at the macro level, but the day-to-day business.
But talking about trade, when this meeting was originally planned, it was with the expectation that there would be 12 Pacific nations would be moving to complete the Trans-Pacific partnership. The United States is now, the Trump administration has now withdrawn from that. How much of this is a setback, particularly for Vietnam's economic development plans?
We will see it in now from a number of elements that I will share with you. First, it's a myth that we have been working so hard to achieve the TPP 12. So it is a time now that we need something to re-engage the U.S. in trade and economic activities with the Asia Pacific. And I think the administration is now thinking of how best it will combine its national interests together with regional trade economic activities in the region. Vietnam supports sustainable engagement by the U.S. strategically and economically in the region. For us, Vietnam, we will continue both ways our national reform to attract more businesses and also investment from other countries, including from the U.S. We have been, and myself also, have been working very hard with the business community in the U.S. on how we can work together. And I think a number of elements contained in the TPP continue to be considered positively by the business community. For example, the business environment related to IP, related to agriculture, related to others, that be very much important. Another element is they are underway already for so many years other regional efforts related to trade and economic integration in the region, and we continue to do that. So the question here is every possible avenues for enhancing the environment of business and economic integration in the region will be continued, and we need to have the U.S. in that regional efforts as well.
Because you said the United States and this administration are developing plans for economic re-engagement with Asia. Have you seen any specific plans yet?
We have seen when they are working with other countries, including Vietnam, on how best we can sustain and promote the momentum of trade relations bilaterally. And they have been committed to go to regional forums, including APEC, and I think there will be initiatives on that. So engaging the U.S. economically and strategically on bilateral and multilateral basis will be important. And I see the aspiration from the new administration on that one as well.
Now, there's some discussion, particularly from Japan, about moving ahead on a TPP 11 without the United States. Is your government enthusiastic about that idea?
I think we should look into this issue as this. Number one, the engagement of the U.S. with regional Asia and Pacific will be very much important. So the U.S. has been withdrawing from the TPP. How we continue to engage the U.S. in that will be very much important. So I think many countries in the region continue to talk with the U.S. to enhance their cooperation with the region regionally. At the same time, the results of the TPP that has been through nearly 10 years of negotiations and through hard work also, they can serve as a template for future or a good reference for future trade agreements, including bilateral or regional. And point number three, in order to sustain that and we see the good things out of the TPP, so the TPP 11 is a way to keep the TPP alive, to serve all the countries. But I must say, TPP or other regional FTA without the US, that is something we need to think and we need to engage the US in. So we keep on the momentum of regional trade agreement in one way or the other, including the TPP 11 is one avenue, but at the same time re-engaging the U.S. Bilaterally and regionally.
Because your country had the most to gain in terms of trade from the TPP.
People can think of gains and pros and cons in order to achieve and to be through with other TPP participants. We have made great commitments out of difficulties and hardships as well. A lot of things we will have to be carried out through reforms. So in order to gain, we have to sacrifice as well. So I think the TPP, in one way or the other, is balanced and beneficial to all.
Now, you talked about the dynamic changes that are going on in Asia. They're also political and on the security front. Do you think the discussions in APEC can lead to any easing of the territorial disputes that are going on now in the South China Sea?
I think the issue of South China Sea, or what Vietnam calls the Eastern Sea, is one of the issues related to both economic and security issues in the region of Asia Pacific. So it has been discussed in many regional forums, including in ASEAN-related forums like this ASEAN Summit. So how people tackle that issue within the context of an economic forum, that will be for the participants to decide. But I think that the region needs a stable and situation in the region and security to be guaranteed in the region so that economic activities can boom. And also South China Sea is a sea lane that relates to important commercial activities. So security, stability will be very much important in the Channel Way. And here we need to emphasize the rule of law as well.
How would you characterize relations at this moment between your country and China, particularly over the issue of who has the rights to exploit mineral development in the Spratly Islands?
One thing is that we have a traditional and overall good relationship with China. Our trade relations has been developing very fast. China is a big country and a source of cooperation, not only for Vietnam but for other countries as well. So the policy of Vietnam is to deepen a good relationship with China. On the issue of Eastern Sea or South China Sea, we have differences related to that. So we have been talking with the Chinese side, and there has been a common understanding shared by the leadership of the two countries on how to keep calm of the situation in the South China Sea, settle the differences and disputes through peaceful means, and also base ourselves on the rule of law and international law, including UNCLOS. At the same time, we think that because maritime security, including freedom of navigation and open life, will be important not only for the claimant states but for all countries in the region and in the world. So we need to work together, not only bilaterally but also in the regional forums and frameworks to ensure that this is a sea of peace and security. So we've been doing everything to keep peace, maritime security, freedom of navigation at the sea, and at the same time ensure that differences and disputes will be settled by peaceful means. But one thing very important is that through in accordance with international law, including UNCLOS.
Because your General Secretary called for unity among the nations of the Southeast Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN. Are you getting the kind of unity you want out of ASEAN on this issue?
First, this year is very much a unique year. It's the 50th anniversary of the founding of ASEAN. If you look into the history of 50 years of ASEAN, then you will see the evolution of ASEAN to make it as now people have become one of the most successful regional organizations. Certainly, unity and consensus in ASEAN play a very important role in that process of progress within ASEAN. But it's also a fact that in some sensitive or difficult issues, there can be different views within ASEAN. So consensus or unity also mean that how we tackle the differences so that we can move further forward. So on the South China Sea issue, or on ASEAN community building, or on our relationship with dialogue partners, including China, US, Japan, or others, there have been differences within ASEAN. But the way of tackling the differences and achieve consensus later on, also part of the consensus process. I used to be to serve as Vietnam's ASEAN Song leader for 7.5 years, and I've been doing much of that. So creating an environment that countries can match up their priorities and national positions to develop a regional position will be very much important. It's not the question of just having consensus, but how to build consensus will be very much important. So ASEAN has shown that, and I think it will continue to be that.
Are you satisfied with the response of the United States and the Trump administration to developments in the East Sea, South China Sea?
I think that it has been reaffirmed by the different administration, including the new administration, that they consider maritime security, peace, and freedom of navigation in the South China Sea or Eastern Sea is critical not only to the interests of the U.S. but for other countries. Point number two, the respect of international law, the rule of law, including UNCLOS, is very much important. So we share all this one. And countries need to work together and refrain from creating further tension in the region to be very much important. Peaceful settlement of dispute. So I think that all the key principles and elements have been reaffirmed by the new administration, and it is shared not only by Vietnam but by countries in the region, including ASEAN countries.
Now, you talked earlier about your country making considerable domestic reforms, particularly in connection with TPP. Are you going ahead, even without an American TPP, with the legislation setting up independent trade unions?
The reform in Vietnam is not only because of the TPP. It's from the heart of our development and national building. And I think that many of the elements will continue to be the national package reform in Vietnam, including in the economic area and in the political area. For example, democratic rights of the citizens and the people. So there has been a legal process by the National Assembly of Vietnam, and it is undertaken on how to improve further the rights of the people and the democratic process in Vietnam. And another one is, apart from the TPP, we have many other what we call new generation of FTAs, including our FTA with the EU or the Republic of Korea. Those TPP also, those FTA also require high standards in the economic area and trade-related areas as well. So on labor, we continue to work to the best benefits of our workers and how the process will be going and to what direction we continue to do that.
Now, some of the international non-governmental organizations, the NGOs, have complained that without the United States involved in TPP, there's less American pressure on your government to deal with certain domestic political and human rights issues, that there's been an increase in arrests of bloggers and other dissidents. What is your response to that?
We may have differences in the political and social system and perception of how democracy and freedom will be. But without the TPP, we continue our reform to the best benefit and welfare of our citizens and people. That's one way. The other way is that even before the TPP, we already have a bilateral dialogue on human rights with US and several other countries like the EU or the Australians. So that dialogue will be continued. And what I want to tell you here, in the case of Vietnam, we see those who have been arrested, those who violated the law and subject to the court's decision. And we may have differences on that, but we have the dialogue to talk with each other. And that channel continues to be.
I only have a couple more questions. At this particular moment, when we're doing this interview, perhaps more Americans than usual are paying more attention to your country because of the PBS documentary series on the Vietnam, what we call the Vietnam War, you call the American War. There was some discussion of that these documentaries would be translated into Vietnamese, and live streamed into Vietnam. Do you see that happening?
I think it just starting the episode 1, so we need to wait a little bit to see the whole story created by the film. The Vietnam War, or the American War as we call it, is a long history, and there are many way of thinking about this one. But one thing we must say to you is that from our perspective, the nation's perspective, the peoples of Vietnam's perspective, is it's a war which is weighs upon us, and we have to stand up to that. But another piece of process that we need to care about is that even after the Fifth War, or as Vietnam War or American War in Vietnam, we have a process of reconciliation and how we can work hard together to transform ourselves from former foes to friends. It's remarkable process of progress that we can work together, and we can also, because of the two sides' efforts, that we can now become comprehensive partners. And I still remember the Vietnam's policy when we started to discuss about normalization of relationship. What we call is that just set aside the past and work for the future. At the same time, we have been cooperating very closely on the world legacy issues, such as accounting for the MIAs, for example, or on our part, the U.S. has been helping out significantly in demining USOs and Agent Orange. So we think that this will be reflected in the film, but we need to wait until the last episode of the film before we can.
Because, of course, we've seen here, despite the intention and best hopes of the filmmakers, it has not brought reconciliation in the United States. If anything, it's created more argument in the United States about our role. You were a child during the war. You and your family had to flee the bombing of Hanoi during some of the most intense bombing. How has that experience, and you share it with your generation, how has that affected your perspective of your country's future and how it deals with the world?
At the time of the war, I was in the northern part of the country, so the most frequent experience is the bombing and the jets roaring in the sky. And as a child of 7 to 10 years at a point in time, it was really a shock to a young child at that age. I have to be evacuated from Hanoi. I was born and stayed in Hanoi at a point in time with my parents to provinces about 150 kilometers away from Hanoi and up north. And every time we went to schools and hear the siren warning that airplanes will be coming and bomb may be dropped, then we have to come into the shelter. And it's really a hard experience that we can have. And I came back to Hanoi during the end of 1960s when there was a temporary cease of the bombing, and then had to be evacuated again before 1972 when they bombed Hanoi. And it was just before a few days or a week or so of the Paris Agreement was signed. And so it's real experience. But at the same time, you may have, I'm sharing with you my first personal experience. My first trip abroad as a Vietnamese and also as a young diplomat was back in 1983 when I was with the delegation going to the UN General Assembly to New York. And my first assignment also in New York. So I have seen not only people in the war during the fierce times, but also the people after the war. The ordinary people, they have good heart for the people of other countries. And then when they know Vietnam, they love Vietnam also. And I also witnessed also some experiences like the Vietnamese, as you call it, we have been bridging the gap between the two nations, pioneering in normalization. And many of the Vietnamese veterans have come back to Vietnam and meet even their former enemies. They shake hands. So I think when political system changes, when the war was ended, then it's a time of great courage for the people of both our nations working together for normalization and reconciliation. So it's real experience.
Excellency, thank you for joining this interview with Diplomatic Connections.
Thank you very much, and I have read a lot of pieces of news and also the whole magazines of Diplomatic Connections. It's really a piece here in Washington D.C., not just for the diplomatic corps, for the ambassadors, but also for the local public opinion, and very much importantly, will show to the different circles in the population here, either on the Hill, the White House, or other agencies. That would be very much important. Thank you for coming today.
My pleasure. Thank you.